Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's EnRoute webinar. My name's Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today, and our presenter is Aaron Clapp, Application Specialist at SAI. He knows everything there is to know about EnRoute, and today he'll be walking us through how to use the component creator in EnRoute, which can be used to make some unique shapes and designs pretty easily. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have either about the component creator or any other EnRoute topics, so feel free to put those questions in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. We are recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything that Aaron discusses, we'll be sending you the link to the recording this afternoon, so be on the lookout for that in your emails. And that's it from me, so we'll go ahead and get started with Aaron.
All right, sounds good. So today we wanted to combine something that we've talked about, I believe in the past, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, but the component creator, and then combining that with 3D and what some of the things you can do with that, since we've been talking about 3D in some of our past webinars. So initially, why don't we get started with the component creator itself and kind of get a basis for that part of the application. And then that way we kind of have a good idea of how that works before we move on to the 3D part. So if you're not familiar with the component creator, it takes, it's kind of a, I don't know, a mix, a kind of a tool that we've created to kind of help just generate like a 3D style of, I guess you could call it kind of a shelf, but I don't want to necessarily limit it to shelves. You can use this to create all sorts of things, create all sorts of designs. But it also, what it does is it converts that 3D type design into something that's two-dimensional that can just be cut out of a flat piece of wood. So here we have the component creator, and that's going to be this guy down here, or if you're probably going to find it under the draw menu, component creator. So you have to have some kind of a shape on screen before you can bring that up. You can then adjust and move these around. These are kind of some different, these are basically the shelving units, if you want to call them, or the dividers. I guess I'll call them dividers. You can identify the size of these dividers here below. So if you want to make these bigger, we can do that. We can also make them odd-sized, so they don't need to be perfectly square, things like that. And in the end, we've got some options down here. We can, rotate this at an angle if we want to. So if you wanted to do some kind of an angular style cut, you can do that. And then basically we have a bunch of settings down here for what's kind of included when we actually output this. So we've got the crosshatch option. So if you want to do vertical without the intersecting lines, this can be a really good idea for all sorts of different things. I've seen this used in creating vertical or horizontal, not shelves, but like to create like an entry desk or something like that. So there's all kinds of uses there, or ceiling panels that look kind of cool. You could kind of use that for that. Return, notch, model, label, layout. These are all going to be features that are going to display once we output. And we'll see those here in a minute. I'm going to leave them all turned on, and then you'll be able to kind of see all those. Then we could just define the thickness of the material that we're going to be cutting this out of. And then that way it gives us an idea of, the size of the pieces. And we've got a little notch gap here. That's for the interlocking pieces, and then how much of a glue gap you want to allow. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply so we can kind of look at what it provides to you. So if we hit apply, again, this is fairly simple. And what it does is it gives us several things. First of all, this is kind of a 3D render of what we're going to get. So finished product ideally would look something like this. That's the idea. Then here, you have the build plate. So basically this kind of has in 3D all the names of the pieces and where they go. So this was how it would be how you would put this together. And then here you've got the nestable, just 2D geometry right here, and with all their pieces labeled. So the idea is then this could, now this particular thing just looks like a shelf. And this, you could make this could be a shelf, or this could be a pattern, a wall hanging, a ceiling hanging, you know, something like that. And then it could just be all cut out of 2D pieces, just like this, and then just be put together. So the thing is, it's not necessarily just limited to fairly simple shapes. So let's go ahead and get rid of all this. And we can do all sorts of things with this as well. Let's draw a couple circles here, and I'm going to do this. So kind of have like an oblong shape there. Turn off my snaps for a moment, and then I'm going to just weld these together. And now I can take this, go back to my component creator. I'll do that here. And now I can create something based off this. I can drag these around if I want to, and you'll see the little red nodes appear. These little red nodes basically just mean that there's a conflict point at one of your intersections. So it's not going to be able to create the proper intersection there that it needs to create. So you want to adjust it slightly so that all intersection points don't land on the edge. And that's kind of what those are. So again, you know, we can create this with fairly easily, and this will create all of our pieces. So it'll conform to whatever shape that we put it in. So that's kind of the real basic rundown of the tool. Really easy to use. The output that it creates, all you have to do is grab these parts. If you want to nest them, you can nest them, and then just cut them with some kind of a tool, right? Some kind of an outline tool, and you put them together. Real basic. But what I wanted to do was combine it with 3D. So what would happen if we started to combine this with something unique from a 3D perspective? So I'm going to draw up a couple shapes here. Using some of our 3D tools, I'm going to use the sweep to rails in order to generate this. But I'm going to create several different shapes, or 2 different shapes, and then hopefully they'll kind of come out the way we want them to. So first thing is I'm going to do is let's start drawing. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here, and then I'm going to explode it into its different pieces. I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to get rid of this one. And I'm going to create like a cone shape. So I kind of want it to come down to not quite a point, but I want to kind of make it come down to sort of a flat edge down here. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it smaller. So we're going to go to scale. We'll scale in 2 dimensions. That's fine. I want it to keep it in the middle. I don't want it to shift up or shift down. So I'm going to say position in the middle. And I don't know, what do you think would be good? Maybe we'll do 6 inches here. Apply. Okay, so now we've got kind of like a cone-ish style shape. I'm just going to draw some lines here. We'll activate our things here, our snaps, and then we'll merge this together. Okay, so now what I want to do is I think I want to take this shape and have it really tall on this side and have it slope down and have it maybe like 1 or 2 inches thick on this side. So taller on this side, shorter on this side. So we're kind of creating like a slant. All right. Now I'm going to do that with 3D. So the way I'm going to do that is, and we've kind of talked about this in other webinars, but I'm going to click on for create a relief. I'm going to say add flat relief. We're just going to leave it at 0, 0 because we're going to let the sweep to rails in a minute do all the work for us. Okay, so in order to use sweep to rails, well, I obviously need some rails. So I'm going to create a couple rails. this one here. I'm just going to copy it, bring it over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my snaps. I'm going to say snap to segment midpoint. I'm going to grab the midpoint. Let's move it away here a little bit. There, snap it to the middle. Snap it to the middle. All right, so now these should be snapped immediately to each other. And just to verify, I'm going to grab both of these, go to transform, align, and I'm just going to align them to center vertically. They should already be that way, but because they're the exact same size and we snapped them to lines that were perfect with each other anyway, but just in case. Okay, now with sweep to rails, we have to have a profile that we want to apply to this, right? So we're going to make this really, obviously we want that slanted. So let's just create ourselves a profile. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go like this. And we're going to draw some lines, and let me snap to the endpoint. Okay, and then let me draw a line here. Oops, not the shift button. I'm going to hit, there we go. Now I hit shift. Okay, and let's click a line there. Okay, so let's get rid of this. That was just kind of a guideline for me. I'm going to merge these together because when we create a profile, we want the profile to be all one single line. So this is the kind of the profile shape that we're going to apply to the side view. So it's going to start up here and then slowly slope its way down to this height right here. So start high, slope our way down. Now I'm going to do this in kind of extreme measures just because it makes it a little easier to see for you guys, especially who aren't watching, or I don't know what size of screen you're using. So I'm going to do this kind of in bigger terms so that it's obviously much, much easier to see. But this can all be scaled down to a smaller size if you needed to. So I'm going to click on this here. This is my 3D relief. I'm going to go to Surfaces, Surface Tool, and Sweep to Rails. Basically, all I need to do is say I want to add it to the existing relief, which there's none really there. It's just a flat relief. I'm going to say normal, and then no height, no base really, and then follow the instructions. So select the first rail. I just click on it, hit next, select the second rail, click on that one, hit play or next, and then select the sweep section. So this is going to determine the two areas that we're going to be sweeping in between. So I'm going to click on my profile twice. Click once, click twice, and I get these two little bars. That means it's going to sweep it from here across the part this way. Hit apply. And again, like I said, this is very extreme, but you can kind of see the shape that I was looking for here. Go into our perspective view. We've got a nice kind of sloped shape here. Now, if we wanted to, we could scale this down a little bit if we wanted to. And the way that we would do this, if we were doing this in real size, what we would do is we would scale this down to proportion, right? I made this really large so that you guys can see it and we wouldn't have to keep zooming in and zooming out. But you would just make this at a much smaller scale. And then that would help you with that as well. Plus, I think we do have some videos on how to use sweep to rails specifically. So if you're interested in that, that might be a good video to check out as well. Because we probably won't go into a lot of detail about sweep to rails in this video. Okay, so now that we have our shape, we have our nice crazy slope here. What we're going to do is we're going to select it. And we're going to go to our component creator. Now we can do whatever we want in this case. We could do shelves like this or lines crossing, whatever that means. If we check or if we leave this option for loft unchecked, we would basically get this. And we can look at that. And so it has used the the shape of the 3D, but it hasn't done anything in 3D. So that's not really what we want. So when you go to create this, you're going to want to make sure and check that box for loft. That's going to be the one that will give you the option for 3D. So if we check that option and then hit apply, when we go back into perspective, now we've got the same shape, same size, and ignore this little part here. Maybe we can get it out of the way. That's not part of the, get that out of there. That's not part of the 3D design or the cutouts. But now we've got all of our 2D cutouts here to create this shelf. So that's kind of a neat way to create something in 3D and cut a shelf out of it or some kind of a design. Now let's go a little bit farther. Let's go and let's create something a little bit different. So I said we want to do a couple examples here, so we'll do that. Let's do something like this. Let's make this, bring up our precision input center here, and why don't we uncheck proportional. Let's make this 35 by 15. There we go. Okay, so let's do our relief. We're just going to say add. And then let's create some sweeping sections here, except for this time, do we want to do it this way or the other way? Let's do it well, let's build our, first let's build our relief and then we'll decide, or our, what do you call it? Wow, the word has left me. I'll remember it sometime. But we're going to draw our piece that we want to use in order to create our shape here. So what I've done is I've drawn 4 lines that are connected to each other, and I'm going to go into my point edit tool. Let's turn these off for now. And I'm going to modify these. And basically all I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab these and just bend them up. I'm going to bend it down. Bend this one up. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think maybe, yeah, I'm happy with that. I think let's get rid of this extra line. I think I just want the single line there. So I think I drew one too many. Let's explode it. Get rid of that and then recombine it. There we go. Okay. One other thing that we're going to do here is I want this to be raised, so I don't want this to plunge too far down into the relief. So if we leave this unattended like this, these empty lines just hanging there, this will actually start. What will happen is this will start at 0 and then plunge below the relief and then come back up. I don't want that to happen. I want this all to be above. And so in order to do that, I just need to create some straight lines down from here. But in order to do that, let's turn on our snaps here. So basically, we're just going to snap some straight lines, and then it doesn't have to be super accurate, but the idea here is that there. Okay, and let's do a little bit of trimming. There we go. There we go. All right, so now we've got our shape. We don't need this line. We just need those, make sure that those are straight. And I want them to be perfectly the same. The reason why I drew that line down there is I want them to be at the same exact height. I don't want them to be mismatched in height, otherwise that'll cause some problems. So we will merge it together so that it's one piece. profile. I told you I'd remember the word eventually. Profile. This is our profile. Okay, so I think what we want to do is we want to put this profile so that it runs this way. So I'm going to do some rails this way instead. Or no, I guess we did the same direction last time, so that'll actually be fine. Let's see here. Actually, I can just snap it to there. Actually, that's not correct because that's not at the midpoint. So there we go. Snap it to the midpoint. Oop, I actually duplicated those. I had my finger holding down the control button. Okay. So we got our rail set up. I'm going to select my relief. We're going to go to sweep to rails. We'll do the same thing as we did before. Add, no extra height or anything. So we'll click our first rail. Next, click our second rail. Next, click the profile twice to select our sweep sections. And then hit apply. And hopefully this looks okay. Yes. Okay, perfect. Again, this might be a little, this probably was a little bit too extreme. I probably should have extended these a little bit farther, but you know what? We're just gonna roll with it. See what happens. All right, so I'm gonna grab my object here and I'm gonna go to my component creator. I'm just gonna leave everything kind of the same. Hit apply. And now we've created this kind of really unique looking style shelf. Now, what I would probably do is if I were to do this again, I would go back and make the adjustments here so that these shelves didn't land necessarily right in the middle. I think that's probably a mistake there because obviously you've got a straight edge versus a curved. So what I would do is in my pattern, let's get rid of these. So in my component creator, I would say, and this is a little bit hard to visualize, but looks like the peak is right here. So 1, 2, 3. So let's increase the size of these by 10 maybe. And this would be important where I actually made this, if I were to make that symmetrical, but I didn't. So that's another part of it there. But I can kind of get a little bit better. Here, I'll put that at the peak. Apply. So that's a little bit better. So where this shelf lines up with the peak here, and then this one lines up with the low. If I had done this symmetrically, then that wouldn't be an issue. But let me actually load up a file that I worked up earlier today that kind of illustrates that way better. I took a little more time and did it the opposite direction. So this one is flowing the other way. Let's just go all perspective view here. All right, so this is a much better illustration of that. Of course, this took a lot more time for me to kind of make sure that everything was correct and it was all specifically the right size. But now each shelf here or each divider lands on the peak of this shelf and the peak of this one, and then lands right in the trough of that one. And the way I did that here was when I created my profile, I actually made the profile exactly the same size as the relief. So if we click on this and go to F2, I made my relief 30 by 15. And if I click on my profile, I made it exactly 15 tall. The width in this case doesn't really matter. But I made it exactly 15. And when I created the arc, I did 3 equal sections. So this distance here to here, here to here, and here to here were all equidistant. So they're all equal to each other. And that's how I was able to get that to land right in the middle. So just a little more attention to detail there, but you can get that to look really nice and sharp. Those lines land in the perfect spot to create this kind of unique shelf. So this is, again, a shelf. This could be a wall decoration. This could be, you know, some kind of paneling that you create over a wall or something like that. You could create the same shape. Let's take this shape here. And let's do one where we don't do a crosshatch, except for, let's do the angle at 90 degrees. There we go, like that. So it switches it from horizontal to vertical. And then we can maybe split these up, and maybe we do, let's see, maybe not make them so, let's make them a little bit smaller. Let's go down to 2 inches. 2 inches separation. Apply. So now you got something like this. Again, this could be some kind of a wall hanging or something, or like if you were doing like some kind of I've seen these in a couple airports before, where they have walls that kind of look like this. They have like a wavy texture to them. And again, this is just something that I pre-constructed with sweep to rails. This is endless, right? The creativity here and the extent to this can be combined with any 3D relief that you can make in the software. It is not limited. So what stops you from going in here, taking your 3D relief here and using one of our predetermined textures? So you could do that. We could go in here, create a brand new flat relief, and we could go into some of our symmetric textures, like the flow texture, and you could create kind of a crazy flow texture that's really large. This is a little small, so what you just need to do is you just need to scale it up in terms of its size, but you could create this, and of course you want to make it big so that the changes are visible and whatnot, but you can make this bigger and create a completely custom pattern using one of these as your base. So again, if we were to take something like this, let's just delete everything else in the file. What did we set the depth at on this? How deep is this guy? Okay, this is probably a little bit too tight of a pattern. We probably want to go, if we were to actually create this into a wall texture of some kind, we probably want to expand the pattern just a little bit. But either way, it will work, regardless of what it looks like. So if that's kind of what you're looking for, you can create that. So like I said, you can combine this with any one of our 3D textures, and you could create some very unique wall hanging, ceiling panels. I've seen people do some furniture with it. You can create shelves. I guess, if you know, the first thing that comes to mind would be shelves, but so you could do shelves, custom shelving, or things like that. So there's a lot of really cool applications when you combine this tool with 3D. I think that's really where the power of this tool is being able to use the three-dimensional objects in order to create this unique kind of pattern. So that is the component creator melded together with and combined together with 3D objects. I think if you take the time to learn just how the 3D objects and how the 3D reliefs work in EnRoute, even toolpathing aside, don't even have to worry about toolpathing, and you want to do some really cool 3D stuff with 2D geometry, where you just cut flat stuff out of material, you don't have to get into toolpathing. You could just get into learning how to manage or learning how to create 3D reliefs, you know, with some of the tools that we have available to you and things like that. And then you can use the component creator to create some very unique custom pieces that probably nobody else can make. So any questions on this or anything that we looked at in this particular demonstration, or maybe not in this demonstration?
Thanks for walking us through that, Aaron. Any questions for Aaron while we've got him live here? And I'll say while we wait for anyone to come up with questions here, that if you do come up with a question later after we end today, you can always add a comment to the YouTube video, the recording of this webinar, and we can try to answer it there or refer you to a place where you can get the answer for that question. I'll say that our next EnRoute webinar, the first one of 2023, will be on January 24th, and that'll be on converting 3D reliefs to mesh and also learning how to slice meshes. We hope to see you there. We're working on the rest of the webinars for next year, and we'll have some good ones for you. John has a comment/question. These reliefs are inserts for boxes inside.
They can be inserts for boxes. That is one thing that this particular tool doesn't necessarily have, mainly because it wasn't necessarily initially intended for use as, when the developers created it, they weren't really thinking about shelving necessarily. They were just thinking, hey, what's a really cool way to create shapes and patterns and stuff like that in EnRoute using, you know, 3D, that also gives you a way that you can just cut it out in 2D. That's kind of more what they were thinking. So there's not a way to box these in from this tool itself, but you could do that. You could create another box to go around it that this could fit inside of. That's why the option isn't there, is mainly because they just didn't think about it, or that wasn't their primary thought, was to put this inside of a box or anything like that. It was more of a way to kind of create some unique paneling and stuff like that that they've seen before in other places.
Adam, in response to your question, can you start the component creator from the beginning again? You can always watch the recording of this video, so we don't have to start all over unless Aaron wants to go through something really quickly. But yeah, the recording of this video will be sent to you later today, so you can review that as many times as you need to.
Yeah, the component creator is going to be, and I'm actually, unfortunately, I'm using, I guess I probably should change, but I just realized that I'm in the EnRoute 6 emulation. But you could go back to the EnRoute Complete, which is this is going to be your EnRoute 7 look right here. And I believe it's under one of these options here. I believe it's still under, yeah, okay, so it's under Draw Shapes Component Creator. So still under the Draw menu, just under Shapes. But that's how you get to it initially. You have to have something selected, some kind of an object, whether it be 3D or 2D, in order to do that.
Okay, let's see. Question from Brandon. Would this work with a revolve contour for a table frame application?
You know what? That's a good question. I haven't tried it with a revolve contour before. Possibly. I actually haven't tried it. So no, that's an interesting thought. I have not tried it. So just to kind of give you an idea of what, I mean, this would be large scale, but let me just pull over an image so you can kind of get an idea of what might be possible. This is the Salt Lake City International Airport. They did not create this with EnRoute, but these are all just vertical pieces, right? So the idea would be you could create some kind of a pattern similar to this. Now this is probably, this might be hard to reproduce exactly, but the idea is that you could create wall patterns similar or something kind of like this would be the idea.
Right. Got a question from
That would be an extreme example.
Got a question from Alexander. How much does the glue gap and notch gap matter? Should I ever change them?
That's kind of one of those things where, and if you're in the woodworking kind of industry, you're probably going to know better than I would. I don't do a lot of woodworking, so that it is going to make a little bit of a difference when you're creating the objects. How much that needs to be is probably dependent on how you're putting them together, whether you're just gluing them together or if you're going to try and do pocket hole screws or something like that. I suppose if you're doing like pocket holes in your screwing as you screw these together using screws or whatever, then that would probably be, you probably don't need the glue gap. But if you do use just glue, you probably need a little bit of space there for glue, or at least to have some amount of wiggle room. You don't typically always want them to be form-fitting in terms of the way that they notch together, just because then it becomes very difficult to put those pieces together. So you do probably, even if you don't glue them together, you may want a very, very small gap so that the pieces kind of slide together easily. So that's probably more of a woodworking question. I'm not entirely certain what the best application would be for that, but that's a pretty, I would imagine that it's a standard setting for the most part.
Okay, got another question from John. Where do you tell it for material thickness before you cut?
So right here, if we go back into our component creator, so here is our material thickness that we're telling it to cut out of. And that's what's gonna determine your, obviously it's not gonna really, the only thing that it's gonna change is it's gonna change the gap here that it obviously for the interlocking pieces, plus an additional glue or gap here, glue gap. So this would get added to this.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more right now. Thanks, Aaron, for going through those questions. Looks like we don't have any more, so we'll go ahead and close it out for today. Don't forget to sign up for that webinar on January 24th for meshes. That'll be a good one. We'll have the link to sign up for that in the follow-up email that you'll receive later today. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinar announcements or other announcements. And you can sign up for that on our website. Thanks again for being here. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next year.